Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Cornerstone's Torah service for this week. If you're joining us online, please feel free to join in by watching, but also with the chat that we have on the internet as well, too. And if we could have everyone rise here for the blessing of the Torah. Barku et Yahweh Hamivarak. Barku et Yahweh Hamivarak Leilam Vahen. Baruch Yahweh Hamivarak Leilam Vahen. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Yahweh. Baruch Shemo Notein HaTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among all peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh. Bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. Go. Fantastic. And this week's parasha is number 30 on the yearly schedule, Kedoshim. It's in Vayikra, or Leviticus 19:1 through chapter 20, verse 27. And the weekly reading here is going to be a short one this time. It's chapter 20, verses 22 to 27. Now, do we have a volunteer who would like to read that today as I'm looking it up on my phone here? I see Tim with a hand up. We do have it up on the screen if you want to do it. You got it on your phone? Okay, good. Do we have a second microphone, Mike? Yeah, we might need to check the battery on that one. Technology is... Okay. It's the fun thing about technology. It's great when it works. And I've been having a lot of things break around the house, including last night. Going, I love technology when it works. Okay. Because I've got a mic, do you want me to just go ahead and read it off the screen then? Okay, we'll do that one. So in Leviticus 20, verse 22, we'll start. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments, and this is Yahweh speaking, and do them, that the land whither I bring you to dwell therein spew you not out. And you shall not walk in the manners of the nation which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. And you shall be holy or kadosh unto me, for I, Yahweh, am kadosh or holy, and have severed you from other people, that you should be mine. But I have said unto you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give it unto you to possess it, a land that flows with milk and honey. I am Yahweh your Elohim, which have separated you from other people. You shall therefore put difference between clean beasts and unclean, and between unclean fowls and clean. And you shall not make your souls abominable by beast or by fowl, or by any manner of living thing that creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. A man also, or woman that has a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. Thank you. If you can go ahead and have a seat. Are the microphones working now? Oh, fantastic. Now, this week's Parashah subject reading has some very interesting subjects, and we have some worksheets for those of you who aren't on our mailing list to have some good questions on it. They'll try to get good ones that are open-ended to prompt discussion, prompt you to dive into the Word and take a look around. If anybody needs any, I've got a couple extra here. We've got some out in front as well. Chapter 19 begins with the section Yahweh is holy, or Kadosh, which is set apart. Chapter 19 continues with love your neighbor as yourself, and it finishes up with you shall keep my statutes. Chapter 20 is punishment for child sacrifice, punishments for sexual immorality, and you shall be Kadosh. Those are the subject headings. I put these pictures in. There are a couple of pictures that I took when I was over there, and this is what the terrain generally looked like when they were receiving these commandments. This is, the left one is Israel, and the upper right one is in Jordan, but they're very physically close to where they received these commandments to get you an idea where they're camping out. And if we get to go back, you get used to this type of terrain for a while. So I have several discussion questions, as usual, but I like to open it up with any comments or any ideas or questions that you might have as you were reading the Torah service for this week. Yeah, Darren?
Test 1, 2.
Fantastic, there we go.
You're right. There's so much in this, in commandments, but one of them that really stands out to me in this portion is 20, verse 4. I'll start with verse 3. And I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given his seed unto Molech to defile my sanctuary and to profane my holy name. I believe that, to bring this up to date, that's abortion. They gave their children to Molech, killed their own children. Mm-hmm. And verse 4, and if the people of the land do anyways hide their eyes from the man, when he giveth his seed unto Molech, and kill him not, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off. So it's a sin of omission. And for many years on this abortion issue, I mean, for 40 years, I tell people that if you're voting for a person that's pro-abortion, you're every bit as guilty of that murder as they are, the people doing it. And this verse, that's what it states. And a lot of what we'll have to answer to, I believe, on Judgment Day are sins of omission like that, where you did nothing. You had a chance to vote against that. You had a chance to stand up against things that you did not take a stand on in the name of Yeshua. But that really stands out to me in this Torah portion.
Thank you, Darren. Yeah, Rick?
As we look at this whole thing, this has been going on quite a while in America. And it's an abomination. But here's the other point about it. It's not just about voting. Okay, our vote is very important. But let me tell you something, it's about our prayers too. It's about our prayers to have those people removed from office. He said that he'll cut them off. Okay, but when we wake up, when America wakes up and finally gets the idea that we've been in the wrong and repents of those things and begins to pray against the things that are going on that are sin in America today, that's when we'll start having that revival and bring us back to that place, because it's about standing up, it's about voting, and it's about our prayer time.
Good point. Thank you. I see another hand up. Yeah, Tim.
One thing, I actually did this Torah portion a week early because I was mixed up, and I did it last week. So I came here and I was like, wait, they're in the wrong Torah portion. Wait, I did the wrong Torah portion. So it's kind of funny. But the thing I see is it's when you do the stuff in Leviticus 19, some people call it the holiness code or just a way to live rightly. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it and I started looking at it in that light, like it's to preserve life. The Lord loves us and he says so, in there to love your neighbor. And if I start looking in that light, it changes the whole context instead of looking at it as this harsh thing. But it talks about being honest. And it seems like doing these things and working them out in our lives causes us to be separated from the world, be light and salt and light. And then it seems like when we do the stuff here described in Leviticus 19, that we're salt and light. It says don't get involved with witches and witchcraft and all that stuff, and that's what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And it says don't get involved with false judgment, deception, putting stumbling blocks, sexual immorality, everything, all this stuff that it just lays out there. And whether we're walking in that or we're walking towards that, then that's, I think, where we're starting to walk more towards the light. I think that's right now. I think there's going to be coming a time where the Lord's going to start dividing the light from the darkness, and it's going to be very drastic. So either you're going to be really black or you're going to be really light. And I really want to pray that I'm walking in that light.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I'm calling on Rick there. Someone pointed it out to me a few years ago of looking really about since the election, presidential election when Bush was running against Gore. So we're talking like 2000. And they had noticed the pattern since then that you have black, you have white, everybody can kind of spot those pretty easy, as far as human culture goes. And you have a gray area. And their point was the gray area is disappearing. It's either going black or white. That's that separating. You're not going to be gray anymore. You're going to get to the point where you're pushed to go one way or the other. Yes, sir.
Well, we have to remember why they're being given this land. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it isn't because we're so wonderful. Okay? It's because those people were an abomination to him. Yeah. Because of the practices they did. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so what makes us think to go in there and say we're the children of God and then do the same thing and get away with it? It's not going to happen. We become an abomination to him. It's why Israel's been removed several times and gone into captivity, is because of the same thing.
Yep, I would agree with that. And a couple of times in Scripture, the Lord says, just in case you start thinking good about yourself, the only reason I'm bringing you back is to preserve my name. That's him saying that. He's going to preserve his name, his promises. For his name's sake, he will do this. And we keep failing him, but he does it in love anyway. The book of Hosea is a fantastic, when you look at the marriage to Gomer and what happens at the end and stuff, it's to mirror his relationship to us. Yes, sir.
Mike Wilmot says, Darren is right, and they eased us into the news, showed us in the 60s under the term babies. Then they moved into mother and child, either horribly ill and infected or dead. Then right to choice. Now they straight out use the word abortion or kill.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Good to see you in Arkansas being here, bud. Yeah, that's true. Those of us who are older remember watching this whole thing, the prayer getting X'd out of schools, and then, everything just kind of trotting along, and then you got the Roe versus Wade decision in the 70s. And again, that is majorly in the news because someone leaked a draft report. It's not a final report by the Supreme Court that they may overturn Roe versus Wade using a current case. And that, but it's a draft. It's like you would send one around. Do I have everybody's opinion right? Are we on this? Or because one of them hasn't decided yet and stuff. Someone leaked that, and it was basically going to be, I think it was a 4-3 decision that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade. So that's a lot of hoopla right now is going on all over the world, actually, because of that. Yes, sir.
Well, and, we have to look at, too, the steps that took place prior to that. What did they do? They took the Bible out of schools. So, and even Stalin said the same thing. He says the way to the heart of America is through the minds of the young. So once you do start indoctrinating children at a young age, you're going to have a product that follows whatever doctrine you follow or choose to follow. And so that's exactly what they've done. And it's been an amazing time to really study this and to walk it through, because we can see the process that's taken place and the people, those who have made these decisions.
Good point. Yep. Yeah, Miranda. And then we have Jill first. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In reference to what you were just talking about with the Supreme Court decision, if any of you know about the Babylon Bee, they happen to have an article about Molech today, and another one on Yeshua of Nazareth, but I thought you guys might be interested in it. It is, you'd have to know, it's a very, very, very satirical newspaper.
Yeah. And then Miranda.
I was just going to comment that the woman who went to court because her son was being subjected to prayer in the mornings at school, and he was an atheist just like she was many years ago. Today, as an adult, that child is now an older man, and he is a believer today. So.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, Lisa.
Just, you guys are talking about abortion, and everybody you never hear anybody say anything much about the baby's feelings if they could talk, if they were born or something. Right. I was born illegitimately. My mother was in her late 30s, and she was dead set against abortion. She did choose to have me and to keep me, and I'm thankful that she did that because I got a chance to live. If she had believed in abortion, I never would have been born.
Amen to that. And Lisa, you are a blessing to us as well here. That's a neat story. Good. So Yahweh is Kadosh, holy, which again means set apart. I'm hearing a lot of great discussion on that. That concept of coming apart or away from whatever is not holy. The other concept is holy in the profane. So if it's not Kadosh, set apart, it's profane. And the Lord's constantly trying to get us into where he is, the holy, beautiful place, so that we can be with him. But we can't be there if we're in the profane. That's the general concept. So he's telling us that he is holy, and we're supposed to love our neighbors ourselves, and then keep his statutes. That helps get us into his holiness, that relationship that we want. And then again, the punishment for child sacrifice, punishment for sexual immorality. And again, these resulted in the land vomiting the previous people out of it. And as Rick mentioned too, we don't want to do that same thing. The Lord will do it again to you. And Israel has had issues with it, and they still have issues that have not been fully resolved. And then you go through all those, and then that's how we get to be holy. Okay? So, in Leviticus 19:18, shared in the Brit Hadashah, which is the renewed/New Testament or New Covenant, because Brit in Hebrew is covenant. And the Hadashah is like, it depends on how it's used. It could be brand new, but it also could be renewing. That's why I have both of those in there. So in Leviticus 19:18, where is that shared? Oh, I see a hand up already. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay.
Well, it is in Matthew 7:12, which Yeshua says, but it's also in Romans 12:17 through 19. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.
Outstanding.
12:17 through 19.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find that by myself, just so you know.
Did your children help?
From someone else.
That'd be fun. Anybody else? I see another hand up. Pat, right behind Miranda there with the microphone.
It's also in Mark 12:31. Yeshua has just stated the first commandment, and then in verse 31 he says, and the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these.
And where is, now did Yeshua, I don't know, when I kind of grew up in the church, bless their hearts, but when I was taught these things, it seemed like that was the new gospel message from God through Jesus. Oh, you're supposed to love your neighbor, you're supposed to love God. Okay? It wasn't until I matured and got older that I found out that when Yeshua is stating that, he's quoting from Leviticus, which we're going through now, and Deuteronomy. He's reaffirming them, not coming up with a new concept. Yes, sir.
The interesting part is in the Greek, there's actually two words that could be used for new. One of them is renewed, but the other one is fresh or never used, okay, or not used, okay? And when he's talking about loving our neighbor, when he says, I give you a new commandment, that's where you see it come in. Because in that particular word, in new, it actually means never used. I'm giving you a never used commandment. In other words, you guys have never got this right.
I'm glad you brought that point up, because I've always wondered the tone of voice when Yeshua said that to them. Because I'm going, okay, I don't think he would do sarcasm, but he must have been going like, duh, here's a new one, because they weren't getting it. Yeah. Yes, Miranda.
That kind of reminds me of studying Leviticus 19. I maybe started at 17 through 19. There were these several verses were put together from I'm trying to remember the source, Alphabet or something like that. It was animated for children, but it had it was a rabbinical teaching, we'll say. And the way that they had talked about you shall not hate your brother in your heart. So they said, well, in your heart, it's okay to hate him. Go ahead and hate him, but just make sure that you don't just harbor it in your heart. You need to tell them, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. And I was thinking that's very good practical advice to be able to take someone aside one-on-one and tell them, hey, this bothered me, let's talk it over. And rather than harboring sin and bearing a grudge in your heart. But we have the Holy Spirit, and we are charged with loving our enemies and blessing those who curse us and praying for those who spitefully use and persecute us. And that is a much higher calling. And so what Pastor Rick said really made me think of that.
Good job. Pat, right behind you.
I'm looking at Leviticus 19:34. The stranger who dwells among you shall be to you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So it's not just in the verse preceding that, you shall not mistreat the stranger. You have to love him.
Yeah. It's a very interesting concept as I'm studying, and kind of going back stuff that I had studied, but also learning some new stuff because more discoveries are being made every year about the culture of the people groups in these areas, anywhere from Turkey over to Egypt and stuff, because Israel's moving around and mixing with all these groups. That concept of loving foreigners in your land is very different than most of the other cultures. And it really is interesting to me. It really sets Yahweh apart from the other little small g gods running around. Yes, ma'am.
So is the love used here in Leviticus agape? Do you guys know? Or is it philia? It's agape. Agape love. The word that's used is agape, right?
Well, in Leviticus, it'd be Hebrew.
It'd be Hebrew.
Yeah, that's
oh,
the Greek word,
So
but it would
what
be comparable.
Okay, it'd be comparable. The
yeah.
same. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I figured it was because, in Mark, that's the one used. So I was assuming it was the same one used but
Yes, sir.
comparable.
The word agape is a Greek word, but it, actually the reason it's used, particularly when it's talking about Yeshua or Elohim or God, is the idea that it is a godly love that comes from Him. It's not something that is normally experienced in everybody's life. It's a godly love that He extends to us. It's the same love that He gives to us that we should give to others.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, godly love. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Pastor Rick. And the word would be ahava in Hebrew,
That's
which
right.
the same thing. It's Yahweh that defines love, what true love is. And so the other forms of what love are watered down versions of love.
Very
Yeah.
good way to put it, watered down. Yeah, we've got a comment here and then
Yana.
Rick in front. Yeah.
From Yana in Arkansas, it says, love here is saying to be limitless without partiality to all, even the unlovable.
Okay, thank you, Yana. Yes, sir. Rick?
I forgot where I was going. I was listening to him, and I
That's
went down
okay.
another trail. So
Well, last week when your train came into the station, got refilled up. I know you'll remember. That's what I always try to think of it that way, my train of thought, and anyway, it worked for me when I heard it. But anyway, in just a sec, Matthew 22, and it really goes like 36 through 40 is the little section there. So Matthew 22, 36 to 40. This will add on to, I think, what's already been said, which is all, to me, excellent, really, really good. And they said, Master, which is the great commandment in the Torah? Okay. Yeshua said unto him, Thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the Torah and the prophets. Okay, so if the Torah is done away with, sounds to me like this commandment's in the Torah. You would technically, if you follow that reasoning out, you would have to get rid of the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, because it's in the Torah, and the Torah has been done away with. See, it doesn't work. To me, this is one of the examples of thousands of examples where it doesn't work when they say the Torah is done away with. It really is not. And Yeshua says it here, and there was another one in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, which says the same thing. This is critical to the Torah and the prophets. Otherwise, if there's not here, they're all done away with. And we know they aren't, obviously. Yeah, sorry.
okay, so I disagree with the use of Torah in a particular place.
Okay.
Okay, and the reason being is the New Testament is talking about that we're talking about the covenant relationship, okay? And so what defines the covenant relationship? Those are defined in the tablets that are in the Ark of the Covenant, and those are called the tablets of the covenant, okay? And in those tablets it's divided into two sections, actually, to love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the other one is to love your neighbor as yourself. He said, on those two, the rest of it hangs. And specifically in the bread, he was talking about those 10 commandments that he refers to. Now, supposedly, if we go back and take a look at it, the whole Torah was supposed to be a teacher, right, or a schoolmaster. And it was supposed to teach us, and show us the things that we should know. Okay, and so when you look at the whole Torah, what did it do? It taught us an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. These are things that should happen to you because you violated the law, right? Mm-hmm. But when we look at those 10 Commandments, those 10 Commandments are really relational in the aspect that they are defined by love. Okay, to love Yahweh and to love your neighbor, because that second half or the second part of those 10 Commandments are everything that we need to know about loving one another. If we go to John, 1 John, chapter 3, verse 16, it says, this is the one that just, it should be just right in our face. It says, this is how we know love. In other words, John is saying, this is the measurement that we use to know what love is. Okay? That you should lay your life down for your brother. Okay? That's the definition of love your neighbor. That's the definition of love your brother, is to be able to lay your life down for them and show that love, just as he did for us.
Isn't this a good Torah? So I love this discussion. It's really neat. This is so way cool. Thank you. Tim, yeah, do you have one?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. You're talking about the cultural context of some of them. If you go to the end of Leviticus, it says, you shall do no injustice, or the end of Leviticus 19, I should say, 35 through 37. It says, you shall do no injustice in judgment, in measurement, in length, weight, volume. You shall have honest scales, honest weights, honest ephah, honest hin. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And to me, that one's been kind of challenging because it's like in business and in dealings. I realized a couple Torah portions back in Mishpatim that we make thousands of judgment calls a day, and we don't even think about them. I've never thought about them as judgment calls until recently. It's like we make judgment. Okay, do I go with the green light or not? Do I accept this business deal or not? Do I? It's like but it's like it would be so much better if we had his judgment calls instead of our own. And then it's like being honest. It's like some people we just, because they're our friend, we want to give them a better deal. But then there's someone we don't really like, and we don't want to give them a good deal because it's like, you're being mean to me. But then this one's been really challenging to me. It's like, be honest, and it's like it goes with like a whole bunch of other things, just following the local laws and everything like that. And so it's interesting that when I was looking into some of the research, apparently when they would get strangers in, kind of what you're saying, they would do a secondary price, let's say, for strangers, because they're like, hey, this is a stranger, we can get some extra from them, and then they would do heavier weights and balances. And it's interesting that the Lord's like, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to be just, because when you have heavier weight on one side, someone always loses. And someone wins, someone loses. And this is fair. It's like, And to me, it really shows just how much better, or how pure the Lord's word is and what he desires. And to me, it's like, wow, it baffles me.
No, it's a good. Oh, yeah.
Actually, you can see that in Romans chapter 11, and he's talking about the olive tree. And the olive tree, that some of the natural branches were broken off, and you as Gentiles were grafted in. And here's the thing is, the ones that were broken off could be added back in later, because he says that all Israel will be saved. But one of the things we have to realize is that the mercy and the grace that was shown to us, because we didn't have this, we weren't born into it. We were grafted in. Now, once you're grafted in and the graft takes, it's like you were never apart from it. And think about that mercy and that grace. And that's exactly what he's saying in this whole thing, to love your neighbor and to love that one that's living in your gates, that's not born in your gates, to love him as the same way. And think about it, because we're actually receiving the same spiritual food that Israel receives.
Good job. The next question is that I had on here was in Leviticus 19:19. Whose statutes are these? This is a real simple slam dunk question that everybody should get. What does Leviticus 19:19 say in the very first part? You shall keep my statutes, and Yahweh is speaking there. It always helps me because sometimes I can get bogged down in the details in these, or something, I can get bogged down with something I don't like to do, but then I have to realize this isn't a man-made law that maybe I could debate, as we can debate laws sometimes. This one is Yahweh's. So if you break it, which is sin, now your issue is not with me, it's with him, because it's his statute, not mine. And that changes things a lot. Yes, sir.
Mike Wilmot chimed in, and I think he's going back to what Tim commented on a while ago, says, there is instruction on room for judgments. We don't charge interest to a brother, but we can those who do not worship Yahweh.
Okay. Good. Now, do you see the concept of this in the Brit Hadashah? About his laws, his statutes? We follow that? I got two hands. Rick, I think you were first, then Pat.
Okay, to talk to Mike there on what he said. The ones living in the gates were allowed to live in the gates because they would live his statutes. Okay, that was part of the deal. A foreigner just being there, passing through, was a different deal. Okay, it wasn't someone that doesn't mean you're not supposed to love them or care for them. But the point is that to live there and to be part of them was to actually, there was an understanding that it was for them too. And actually Yahweh addresses that. I don't remember the address right now, but Yahweh addresses that by saying that foreigner's name will never be forgotten in his household. The ones that live there and follow his word.
I see a hand up with Darren. Oh, Pat first. I'm so sorry, Pat.
Okay, this is question 2, and I'm not sure, but I thought of Matthew 5:17.
Yeah.
Yeshua said, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill." And then in verse 19, he says, "Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven."
Good job,
So I'm
Pat.
not sure, in the light of what Pastor Rick was talking about, law not necessarily meaning Torah. So do you think that fits here?
While Rick's looking that up, Darren, I think you had a comment? You had your hand up?
Well, yeah, the difference between the foreigner living with you and just passing through is a big difference. It's the same with the household. I let people in my house, plumber, electrician, whatever, that aren't necessarily, they don't keep the commandments. But if you come stay with me to live with me, you have to keep the commandments. I'd kick my own son out because he quit keeping the commandments. So, and that's the difference. And this whole Torah portion, it's over and over. I am holy. They are his statutes. And what he's saying is, I am holy. These are aspects that I use. You use them too. This is my household commandments. They need to be your commandments also. But so I don't think it's all right to lie or cheat an outside person either. What Tim was talking about, it can be very confusing. You still, I believe in being totally honest, even with your enemies and outside people that aren't within your household or within Israel. But you do have a different standard. You don't have to love them like yourself. I don't believe, and that's a big difference, and you can get into lines drawn on all that. But all right.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, Rick.
Galatians 3, starting in verse 19. It says, "Why then was the law given? It was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise was made would come. The law was put into effect through angels by means of a mediator. Now, a mediator is not for just one person, but Elohim is one. Is the law therefore contrary to God's promises? Absolutely not. For if a law had been given that was able to give life, then righteousness would certainly be by the law. But Scripture has imprisoned everything under sin's power, so that the promise by faith in Yeshua Messiah would be given to those who believe. Before this faith came, we were confined under the law, imprisoned until the coming faith was revealed. The law then was our guardian until Messiah, so that we could be justified by faith. But since the faith has come, we are no longer under a guardian, for you are all sons of Elohim through faith in Messiah Yeshua." Mm-hmm. And so basically, what he's saying is, I kind of look at it as, where was the tablets of the covenant? Where were they? Located in the tabernacle or the temple? They were in the ark.
Yeah.
Where was the book of the law? It was outside of it, leaning against the ark. Mm-hmm. Our guardian, or mm-hmm. our schoolmaster, as some versions use it for. Mm-hmm. Until we were saved by faith. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to walk in today, is faith to carry those things out. What was the promise that Yeshua made when he ascended, or just before he ascended? Was that he was going to send a comforter, and the comforter would be the one that reminded you of everything he said. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? And so yes. Right now, what we're living in is we're living in that faith which is being refined, okay, as we go. So that's exactly what Galatians chapter 3 that I just read is mm-hmm. talking about. Okay, so when we look at those, what is our covenant? Our covenant is to love Elohim, love Yahweh, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that's what he said. And mm-hmm. those are outlined in the covenant.
Mm-hmm. I see a hand in the back.
To comment further on what Pat said, Yeshua is the word of Elohim, and we're called in various different ways to uphold his word, to revere his word, etc. And I don't think we can separate his word into parts. I think the Torah and Yeshua's words while he was here on earth, and the covenants that are presented in the Torah and throughout the what we would call quote unquote Old Testament. I don't think we can separate any of those. Those are all part of Yahweh. They're all part of his nature. Yeah, and we can't say, oh well, this applies. The Torah only applies for such and such a time or whatever. I think we need to. I in my mind, I got this kind of picture as a bridge that, before Yeshua, you've got a road going. And then when the temple was destroyed, that left like a break in the road, so to speak. And I see Yeshua as that bridge over to the other side of the road. The whole road is still there. And it's all, if we're going to get from one place to another, we have to use the whole road. But Yeshua is that bridge that otherwise there'd be a big chasm in between the two parts of the road where it was kind of blown out by the
Yeah, we
disappearance
got one
of the
more
temple.
comment here, yeah.
Okay, so how do we get salvation? By faith, right? Scripture's pretty clear about that.
All right.
Okay, and that's all I'm saying is that he's our key, our faith, and the even the ones he tells us is those 10 commandments. On all those 10 commandments, all the rest hang. Okay, all the rest hang.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our covenant relationship. And what I'm getting at is that we can't, and I guess the thing I'm trying to get at is that we cannot just do the law. Nobody's been able to do it since time began. And that's what Paul is saying there, is that you can't just say, go do the law, go do Torah, because it's not going to work for you. The only thing that Torah is going to teach you is that you can't and that you're going to fail. Okay? But when you come into faith in Yeshua, then we can be successful at those commands that he's given us. Okay? But it takes a covenant relationship for us to do that.
Okay. Tim?
I had a Jewish person, the Orthodox Jewish person, they had a discussion with us when we were in Israel, and it really stuck with me. And he said, the order of the Torah is there for a reason. And he said, you start with Genesis. And he says, you start with Genesis is because it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he said, what kind of walk did they do? He said, they had a faith walk. And he said, for them, he said it was about believing. He's a Jewish person. I was like, I was like,
Yeah.
I would have thought, someone else would be teaching me this. But he said, we believe, and then once we believe, and he says we start walking out that faith, that scary road, because it was the Torah portion about Abraham going to the promised land. And he said, then when we get there, when we're starting to walk, the Lord will give us more, and then he'll give us his commandments. So he says, you notice the promises are given. Abraham walks out in faith. Then afterwards, you get all the, Exodus, and that's off of the promises, and then you get all the other rest of it, and then it just builds all the way till Yeshua comes, and then Yeshua's even more, fulfilling. It's just, I don't know, kind of building on what Pastor Rick's also saying.
Yeah, to me, the faith is always, the key to our relationship with the Lord is always faith. It has been since the Garden of Eden, and it will always be faith. It has to be that, and that comes from him. It's a free gift. That's the key to the whole thing, okay? Faith without works, as James would say, or Yaakov, is dead. So you have to do things that go with it to prove your faith, just like we do. My wife and I have been married almost 40 years. There are certain things I do to prove that I love her, and that I am honoring that oath that I swore in front of over 200 people almost 40 years ago. I can't just do what I want, and break it or do whatever. It doesn't work. They got to go, to me, they always have to go hand in hand and go together. Another scripture that I was looking at is in the book of James, which if you look in the Greek, it's Jacob actually, but they changed it for the English version. And it's in chapter 4, verse 12. It kind of is ancillary, it kind of helps support a lot of this. And that is, there is one lawgiver. Because he's talking about people judging incorrectly. But he says there's one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Okay? That's Yahweh. Yahweh, Yeshua, as we learn now more in the Brit, of more who his son is. There's one lawgiver. Whose statutes are these? They're Yahweh's. There's only one lawgiver. Okay? And then he's the one that saves or destroys, not us. That's not our job. Yes, we have to make decisions and judgments every day, yes. And we have to be willing to be judged by the same standard, because I believe we will. For me, that's how I try to approach that. But again, ultimately, it comes down to the Lord. And then on question 3, how do we do child sacrifice today? And when do we do this? And when we do this, whom do we serve? We've talked about this some already. And one of the The ones that we talk about, because it's very much in the news and it comes up every year and stuff, is abortion, because that's killed more children. I think it's up to 43 million now, Sharon, in the U.S., let alone the countries that the federal government forces through foreign aid to adopt abortion. That's part of their package deal they don't talk a lot about. When they do a foreign aid deal with a country, they make them agree to a lot of things to do that, and part of that package is abortions. So you'll see some government heads every once in a while rebel against accepting foreign aid because it breaks their morals. There's a lot of things that they're asking them to do that are immoral to them, and they don't like it, and they want to resist it. And abortion is one of those. So you have all of those tens of millions added on to this. And let me share these. So we're having primary elections right now, and in the fall, there's the midterm elections because it's midway through the term of the President of the United States. So up on our front counter there, right when you walk in, we have two very, very good. This one has more information, but they're both really good. They're like good complementaries on issues and people as far as biblical matters go. How are the morals? How are they going to vote on those? How are they going to do on those when they get into office? Now, obviously, they can say one thing, but they also try to track them to make sure they don't just use it to get in office and then do something else that's opposite. So these are very, very good. I highly recommend them. Okay, I highly, highly recommend them. So those are two things. Sorry. Yeah, Rick?
Okay, so in that time, they actually put their baby in the hands of a god. Okay, and that's why they could say they sacrificed their child to a god. Let me ask you this, and I want you to think about this. Are we doing that today? Because you don't see Molech, a god made of Molech really out there that we're doing that with. Are we doing that today? And I say yes. Okay, and the reason I say yes is that there is a huge amount of money being doled out for abortion, and it's lining the politicians' pockets. It's lining other pockets of products that people sell that have these aborted parts in them of these babies. And so we're doing the same thing, maybe not to a heated up hands of Molech, but we're doing it to the heated up hands of our capitalism. Okay? I'm not putting down capitalism, but I'm putting down what capitalism has become. And that's what it's about. It is the same thing as what they were doing back then.
Yeah, Michael.
Well, and I know this is going to go into one of your other questions of how this affects us today as well, but the part that really hurts my heart, for better words, or my spirit in this is that we have churches who right now are standing up for these beliefs as well. We have churches who are hanging their LGBTQ flags outside saying everybody's welcome. And
Yeah,
I
I've
do
seen that.
think everybody's welcome to the kingdom, but it's a matter of change to get there and fully be there. And we have a church today who don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because they want tails in the seats. So the truth has gone out the window. Therefore, they'll stand up for anything you want to believe in. And that's a terrible place for anywhere to be in the world, that we have the foundation that everything should be built on turning its way to be built upon the foundation of that capitalism.
Well, and I think
Good
the
point.
churches that you're talking about too, especially the ones that are like blatantly like for this whole like mainstream, just believe, coexist kind of perception, they are that church. They're not this church. Like they're not. So it is sickening, but I was probably like, I don't know, like 13 or something, 10, something like that, when all of a sudden it dawned on me that like, oh my goodness, we are in the Bible days. Because when you're reading it, you're like, oh wow, that's crazy, that's weird. How do they do that? How do they, oh, everybody believes in God. And then one day I realized, oh my goodness, it's the exact same right now. It's just different outfit, you know, but they're still wearing clothes. Like, you know what I mean? It is the same. They really put him in a burning bronze statue's hands
Yes.
like that?
Yes, they really did. Yeah.
You know, with abortions, they figured out a way to do it before the baby was born, you know. I bet you then more children were saved because the mothers actually looked at their child and tried to save them. They probably had a higher survival rate when they were burning them on a statue than they do now.
Just so we got another one back there.
Yana commented as well again. It says, in popular culture, abortion is rampant, larger for the sake of sustaining immorality. One might say that we are sacrificing our children to Molech at the abortion clinics.
Yes. Rick and then Tim, sorry.
Well, you know, actually abortion in the United States was instituted prior to sonograms. And now mothers can actually see their babies sucking their thumbs. The pictures are so defined. And they could watch them, you know, be developed. What age did you say that they could see them as a human body?
I think it's like 6 weeks or something.
Yeah, it's very, very early.
And
Yeah.
so they can see it. There's no excuse today for, well, I just thought it was tissue. There's no excuse for that today.
Right.
And they still do it based upon what? Based upon they don't want to be responsible, or they don't want to raise a child on their own, or on it, and the excuses are on, and most of them self-centered. That's exactly right.
Yeah, Tim.
I read a really good article by the same people who found that cursed tablet on Mount Ebal that you showed. And they had a comparison between ancient Carthage and their passing through the fire version of child sacrifice, and then also the, abortion clinics today. And one of the interesting things that they found, and they, showed the other side as well, was as Carthage got more and more civilized, you would think they would do this kind of stuff less. They actually did it more. So it actually increased. So the more that their society got civilized, the more they did it. And you could kind of see that with our society too. Seems like the more we've got quote unquote civilized, by whose definition I would ask, the more we've gone into this madness. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of crazy.
It is, yeah, it's kind of crazy, that's for sure. We've still got a few minutes left, so we'll see what we can get into. This is a fantastic discussion. But this really shows you where the rubber hits the road. This is where you have to put your faith into action. And it was very serious in the land of Israel because, again, of sexual immorality. That next one there, they're pretty severe. The sacrificing of children to Molech, which is like a big kahuna deity in Mesopotamia, it was a big one. They're very, very severe. These aren't just minor infractions. These are enough to get you spit out of the land, and you're not coming back, so to speak. This is very important. That's why the Lord is telling them this. Remember, the goal was to go from, I'm holy, I'm calling you into this relationship, this is what you do, and then you'll be holy and you'll be with me. There's a reason why he's not trying to be a heavy or a meanie. It's because these things are so profane. Some are more than others. He's warning us. Please don't do this. Okay? But that's why. And then Leviticus 19:2 and Leviticus 20:26 are bookends, so to speak, on this Torah reading, as they state almost the same thing. Almost. What does Yahweh add to verse 26, and how does this tie into what we read in Torah some weeks ago in Exodus chapter 4? So in Leviticus 19:2. We've got, speak unto the children, under the congregation of the children of Israel, and saying to them, ye shall be kadosh, holy, set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am holy. So he's calling us to be just like him. So now we'll go to chapter 20, verse 26. And ye shall be holy, kadosh, unto me, for I, Yahweh, am holy. So it's the same. See that? But there's a little bit more extra in there. And I have severed you or separated you from other people that ye should be mine. That's set apart. And we're his. We're actually his children. Now in Exodus chapter 4, I'm going to go to that one. And let me make sure I got this down. It says, you will be mine. Okay, at the end of the verse that I just read you, he said, and you will be mine. Mine what? Right? And in Leviticus 22:23, it talks about, I think more specifically, because we're children of God, okay? But even there's a special relationship that he does that passes into how families are constructed. There's a what? And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith Yahweh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. That's the relationship Yahweh's calling us into, is to be his firstborn children among all the children. Does that make sense? It's getting a little more narrow, more specific. And I say unto thee, let my son go that he may serve me. So that's what we're called to do. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. This is a serious issue with the Lord. That's why they had the Passover that night. It was a punishment because he wouldn't let him go. So that's why the Lord killed all the firstborn in Egypt, animal and human. So that's what he's calling us to in the relationship. We are his firstborn. We belong to him. And then, this was a bonus scholar question for those of you who like to dig in a little deeper. And then we'll close out with this. And that is, in this parashah, 2023, what can you share about the word abhorred? And why do you think Yahweh chose this word for this sentence? Pat?
The Hebrew for abhor, it's Strong's H6973. Kutz means severing oneself, be grieved, loathe, or be weary. So Yahweh wants to separate himself from loathsome things and from the people who do those.
Mm-hmm. And these aren't little things. These are things that, to use a human thing, this really gets under Yahweh's skin. This really, he gets upset over. He does not want this around. So that's why I think for us is to look at that and treat it the same way. Try to take that on. Okay? That's a very strong word. Very strong word. And then, does anybody recognize that picture? I showed it once before. Slightly different angle. I took that one in Jordan. This is the area where Jacob wrestled with the angel. This is the exact stream. You can see the valley is starting. As the valley is left there, it's the same way on the right-hand side. It starts up in a flat area, real lush and green, but then it narrows down to this. And what's amazing is you're not very far from where Sodom and Gomorrah is where I took this picture. It's not very far away at all. It's really close by. Okay, we're out of time. So I will end with this. Again, I think we've talked about this. Where's Yeshua in this parashah account? How is this relevant to us today? It's right there in our election, let alone all of the things that are going on in this country. Okay? And does anybody know where that picture on the left is? I took that one. That's in, depends on how you want to politically call it. I'll call it Israel, but it's under the Palestinian Authority right now. No, I'd love to have that one. That's in Hebron. I didn't get to there, actually, of all the years I was there. This is Jericho. And up there on top is a walkway that you can see here. These are pictures other people took. But there's Jericho there on the map on the upper right-hand side. You saw Mount Nebo. That's where Moshe was taken so he could look into the promised land, but he wasn't allowed to go there. Then they crossed over the Jordan River. That's that vertical line there. They conquered Jericho. You can see people on the walkway where they've excavated down there. And there is a very large Arab village butted right up against it. I think it's like over 13,000 people are there. And then you can see where some of the ruins are there, and then that's the stark terrain behind it. It is very stark terrain. I mean, there's no sagebrush up there. So, but that's where Jericho is. And they've excavated it, and they found that there were two walls, and the outer wall collapsed into the first wall, which allowed a ramp, and that's where the Israelites went right into the city. It's pretty, and that wall fell into the inner wall, which is like, yes. So it's fun. Another example of where they've seen things that are proving that the Bible is historically accurate. Yeah, I did get to go there for a little while. And you can see the stairs there. Those walls are very tall. Those are huge. Big, big walls that they had. It didn't do them any good. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for everybody who contributed in discussion today. And we'll take a short break and then be ready to go for our second service at about 11:30.